If I was to pick something in terms of clothing reference, some kind of material, I would definitely go with this one. If this could be, if I was to choose just one, right, piece of a book or some kind of resource, that would be it. So that book served me for many years, and even though I don't really use it today, or if I do use it, it's very rarely. It is still, I would say, and I would argue, it's still current and perhaps even more important than when I was using it myself. The reason why I chose this book is because there's just, in terms of variety, you get pretty much any material that is out there, except for probably silk, right? Because we don't really see silk in military. There's no need for that. But the beauty of the book is not just the amount of the materials, the amount of references, and here it says 650 illustrations. The beauty of the book is precisely the fact that all of those are illustrations. And the earlier, not costumes, but uniforms, for example, those ones, right, from 18th, 17th century, something like that, those are illustrations. So in that sense, they don't really serve that well as a reference. They serve as some kind of a design inspiration, perhaps, right? Color and just shapes, silhouettes, and all of that. But when it comes to actual fabric, they don't really serve as good as a resource as everything that is following the that period, right? Because everything else moving forward, World War II especially, is based on photographs. So what we get is we get an illustration based on a photograph, and the artist or artists, I don't know what was the process like establishing this book or making this book, the artist chose the most, I guess, important things when it comes to clothing. So everything here is, well, stylized, right? In a sense of the execution, it is stylized, and what we get as a result is we see all the folds, we see all the wrinkles, right? It's so clear. This is not a photograph. It's literally painted by somebody, right? And that somebody chose the most important things. All the noise, all the stuff that we don't really need is not here. Everything is super well read, right? We can see so well the definition, the kind of the nature of the fabric that we're looking at, right? This is clearly leather, and we can see all the detail here. We can see all the folds, right? The kind of folds accumulated only on leather, for example. Here we see different kinds of fabric in here. We even get the chance to see those kind of things, right? And there are even some socks reference. There are some skirt references. And another thing that is also very good, and this is why I think this is the book is probably even more important than it was when I was doing clothing, is because everything that we see here has been worn or is being worn on real people. So what that means is that when we use Marvelous Designer, and if we want to use that asset in a production and not just for some kind of design work, right? If you enjoy this content or find it useful, please consider supporting me by buying me a cup of coffee via the link in the description. We want to make sure that the clothing that we make in Marvelous Designer or later in ZBrush feels like it has been worn by somebody or by the character that is wearing the clothes, right? It shouldn't feel like it's a mannequin, which is the default result that we get from Marvelous Designer. When we make something in that program, the end result is that a character is just a mannequin that wears some kind of clothing. But to get this kind of believability, we need to be able to understand what happens to the clothing when we move, right? When we move our limbs, when we move our arms. And in here, it's very clear, again, because of the nature of this resource, because it's illustration, everything is just so well pronounced and so easy to read, right? So here, for example, we see those folds where where the armpit is, right? Because of the tension that happens when we move our arms. The same happens here when we bend the arm, right? We get those folds accumulating in the elbow, and at the same time we can see that those folds are happening on the forearm. They don't really happen that much here, and the reason for that is because when we bend the elbow, the clothing, I guess the sleeves, it doesn't get shrunk, but it moves closer to the elbow, right? Just because of the nature of the movement. Or perhaps he was moving the sleeves up, right, tucking them up somewhat, and that's why we get the accumulation of those folds. Same for those kind of wrinkles, or for those kind of detail, right? When we lift our legs, the tension happens, and this is what we get. We see this on denim, we see this on jeans, right, on cargo pants, things like that. So the book is just absolutely incredible. The amount of reference, the amount of understanding, if you do want to get an understanding of clothing, of the behavior of the clothing, behavior of the material, is just I think it's just unparalleled. It's just unbeatable. There's just so much to choose from here, and I've gathered just a couple of not couple, but just a few examples. But there are some formal uniforms as well, right? So we see not somewhat like that when we see this kind of not damaged but worn look of the clothing. We get to see something more formal. For example, in here we can see the crease, right, where the ironing was taking place. Well, not ironing, but the way the shirt was ironed was done in such a way that this crease appears, right? So we get to make those kind of details, not necessarily in Marvelous Designer, but we get to make them, for example, in ZBrush, right? And that will tell us what kind of person that is, what kind of clothing that is. So it's and the modern days as well, there's just probably a little bit more reference for something that we wear today, right? So this is just a leather jacket, some kind of a pair of pants, and things like that. And there's even this kind of thing that I used once on a project when I needed to make something of a similar material, right? It was something very puffy, but at the same time super sturdy. So I was using this book and this particular image and some other references of this costume, right? Well, the guy who's working with neutralizing bombs, right? So yeah, you can find basically everything. For example, even those kind of things, the knee pads, right? The tension that happens when we wear knee pads, this can be used for anything, belts, things like that, right? You will see all of that in this book. And it's a gold mine. If you have a chance, I just checked it on Amazon, it's still available. I used to have a PDF, and now I have the printed copy of that. It's a big book, quite heavy, because there are just so many illustrations in here. And actually, I don't think I've read a single sentence from that big book, because I'm just I'm not exactly interested in what people wear and where it came from. I'm mostly interested, and at least was more interested in the way the clothing behaves, right? When somebody wears that, if it's a different material, what does it look like, what it's supposed to look like. So give it a try, see if you can get your hands on this book. If you are interested in clothing, that's going to be an amazing addition to whatever reference resources that you use.